Modern discourse regarding gender and sexuality has grown more colorful and highly contentious in the last decade, as our society has begun to move towards recognizing diverse ways of being. Despite increased recognition of gender and sexual diversity, the LGBTQ community has faced increased resistance, as evidenced by the over 100 laws restricting LGBTQ rights passed in the last 5 years, with over half of those passing in 2023. A bill similar to Florida's Parental Rights in Education Act, which would in part prohibit classroom discussion of gender identity or sexual orientation, was proposed but not passed in Hawaii in 2022. People who support such laws have expressed concerns regarding the appropriateness of discussing gender and sexuality in the classroom, particularly along the lines of religious liberties and parental rights. Such legal and political discourse has implications for the wellness of the LGBTQ community, with as many as two-thirds of LGBTQ youth reporting that debates surrounding these laws have negatively impacted their mental health. Research has shown that discrimination and rejection by peers and family can lead to increased risk of suicide and mental health symptoms. As an example, a survey found that nearly half of LGBTQ students considered suicide in 2022. Recent history shows that the friction of these divisive conversations becomes difficult for our community as a whole. As an example, during the debate over same sex marriage in Hawaii in 2023, I remember stories of families struggling to navigate the issue as people took positions on either side of the debate. Arguments turned ugly, and in some cases, loved ones even expressed cutting ties with one another. Clearly, the conflicts over these ideas of gender and sexuality create pain in our Hawaii community. How might we begin to collectively examine these ideas in a way that points us in the direction of understanding and historical grounding? To guide the search for such answers, I turn to an olelo no eau, or Hawaiian proverb, I ka wā mā mua, I ka wā mā hope. A translation of this saying in English is sometimes noted as the future is secured by the past. To provide more specific context, va means time. Mamua refers to the temporal position of before or the past and the physical position of in front of. Mahope refers to the temporal position of after or future and the physical position of behind. This proverb articulates the idea of standing with our backs to the future and our eyes on the past. Hawaiian culture, like many indigenous cultures, maintains the importance of bringing forth knowledge from the past to inform our decisions, motivations, and pursuit of wellness in the present and for the future. How does the past inform our thinking regarding gender and sexuality? What about our histories can help us clarify how we found our way as a society to our present day realities? When it comes to gender today, society holds fast to the idea that male and female are the only valid ways of being, declaring this gender binary an established, fixed, and even divine truth. The gender binary, in turn, serves as the foundation for constructing heterosexuality as the one acceptable form of sexual orientation. However, when one looks ikawama mua and digs into the past, what does that time before tell us about gender? Global history shows that throughout recorded history and since time immemorial, thriving cultures have recognized, revered, and integrated more than two genders. A page on the PBS website hosts a map of gender diverse cultures, showing that people who are not solely male or solely female, or do not fit either of those classifications, have existed for centuries, long before the idea of the gender binary. Diversity along the lines of what we consider gender has always been a reality across time and place. Languages also demonstrate the existence of gender diversity. Peake and Tikuna stated that sexual diversity has historically been the norm, not the exception, among indigenous peoples. Ancestral tongues prove it. In this image, you can see examples of words from indigenous languages around the world that have been used to describe people who are neither male nor female. Each color identifies words from a different part of the world. The blue terms come from the Pacific, the orange, Native American groups, the pink, South America, the yellow from Africa, and the green from Southeast Asia. Many of these words are centuries old and some remain in use today. Common themes emerge when one examines the origins of these words and peoples. For one, the idea of gender diversity is not new, but a global, centuries old reality. The assumption that gender is and has always been only male and female is historically inaccurate. When one examines these gender customs, we see that oftentimes social role is the focus versus physical form. The body one is born in does not restrict how one can participate in and, importantly, contribute to society. This is because in many cultures, how someone contributed to society was of the utmost importance for the group, regardless of what roles or identities they took on. Furthermore, many cultures felt that there was power in someone being able to traverse between that which was considered masculine and feminine. As such, these people, being seen as having access to more power and energy, were given important roles in society, particularly those related to religion, spirituality, and healing. Such roles made them integral to the functioning of society. Examples include the Hijra in India, the Babaylan in the Philippines, the Mutang in Korea, and the Mahu in Hawaii and Tahiti. People who were diverse beyond what we consider the gender binary were not cast as outsiders. They were instead an important part of their communities and cultures. And in some cases, such as Mahu in Hawaii, we continue to hold important roles in our communities. When gender is not binary, this also calls into question the idea of heterosexuality, which is founded on the idea that there are only two genders. Like gender diverse customs, same sex relationships have been noted across the globe, including in Africa, Asia, Europe, the North American continent, and Polynesia. Like gender diverse individuals in many cultures, same sex relationships were also connected to rituals, traditions, and responsibilities. In the case of Hawaii, same sex relationships did not designate a person as homosexual, since sexual orientation was not a concept in Hawaiian culture. In fact, same sex relationships had less to do with identity and more to do with the functions such relationships served in society. Given this history, how did we get from such diversity in human experience to the specificity of the gender binary and heterosexuality? In Hawaii, much like other parts of the world, these concepts were forcibly imposed by colonization. Across global history, colonialism has played a dominating role in the displacement of indigenous gender and sexual customs, including in Africa, Australia, Southeast Asia, and among Native American and Pacific peoples. In Hawaii, colonization produced both the displacement of Kanaka Maoli, or Native Hawaiians, and Hawaiian culture. Colonization can refer to a form of domination, the control by individuals or groups over the territory and or behavior of other individuals or groups. The term refers to a process of domination that includes economic exploitation and a process of cultural change. Euro-American foreigners who sought to colonize Kanaka Maoli did so in the interest of using the land and natural resources for economic gain. In the endeavor to wrest control of land away from Kanaka Maoli, Euro-American foreigners engaged in a process of cultural change in which they sought to establish themselves and Western culture as superior to Kanaka Maoli and Hawaiian culture. These historical actions designed interrelations of domination, wherein Euro-American foreigners and culture were presupposed as superior to and thereby positioned to dominate Kanaka Maoli. The construction of such a dynamic legitimized colonization, as Euro-American foreigners, in the assumption that Kanaka were primitive and inferior, represented themselves as benevolent, parental, and even virtuous in the economic exploitation and cultural displacement of Kanaka Maoli and Hawaiian culture. Such domination and displacement separated Kanaka Maoli from the land and led to Western culture replacing Hawaiian culture as the dominant worldview in Hawaii. As part of these efforts to colonize, gender and sexual customs were weaponized to great effect. Control of the body and control of a nation were, as Mary describes, intimately joined. Hawaiian customs were repudiated as immoral and even criminalized by Euro-American foreigners, then used as evidence that Hawaiians, in their licentious lack of sexual discipline and moral uprightness, were inferior and in need of education, saving, and civilizing. As Kanaka concepts regarding gender and sexuality were so different from those of the Euro-American foreigners, the imposition of Western customs led to the corruption and rejection of Hawaiian customs, including those commonly associated with modern queer discourse, such as aikane and mahu. Gender and sexuality were, in turn, significant cultural battlegrounds in the process to colonize and eventually overthrow the Hawaiian nation. Domination at the sites of gender, sex, and the body are where the colonization of Hawaii and LGBTQ rights intersect. Though modern terminologies were not used at the time, through the imposition of monogamous Western marriage, Euro Americans forcibly introduced cultural concepts that would become what we understand today as the gender binary and heterosexuality, concepts which are now weaponized against the LGBTQ community in the form of transphobia and homophobia. Dominant narratives regarding Hawaiian sexual customs and LGBTQ identity and sexuality bear similarities in the way moral revulsion is used to inferiorize and dominate others. Such narratives illustrate the strategic weaponization of gender and sex in the interest of exerting control over the bodies and behavior of a group of people. In Pukamai Ke Ko'a, we will examine the complex interactions between colonization, domination, Kanaka worldview, and LGBTQ discourse, as well as the impacts that these intersections have on present day dynamics.